Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 40th Gershman Philadelphia Jewish Film Festival. My name is Matt Bussey. I'm the festival manager for GPJFF. We really hope you guys enjoyed the movie. My Name is Sarah. We premiered it last night at 8 o'clock. It's still available for 2 days, so you have until, what's today? Monday. No, today is Tuesday. You have until Wednesday, tomorrow at 8 o'clock to watch the film. We really hoped you enjoyed this gripping movie, and we're so excited to introduce to you the director himself, Stephen Oritt, right here. Hello, Stephen. And yes, this discussion is going to be moderated by Dr. Elliot Ratzman. Ratzman, right? I know Elliot, and I always mispronounce his last name. Dr. Elliot Ratzman. And yeah, he is a member of our the festival screening committee too. You may recognize him. He does a lot of our discussions. So we're live right now. So if you've been on this before, you guys know that here's just a little summary of how it works. So you can comment on the right side. And if you have a question, you can ask it in the chat on the right side, or what we prefer to do is that there's a ask a question button to the left of the bottom screen. If you have a question, you can literally go there and ask it. And then we have colleagues that here, like Anya, who's been, made the introduction. They're going to be, like, how do I say this? Making sure that the questions are there, and then when they're answered, they'll click on it, answer it and everything like that. So, and Elliot and Stephen, they can see the questions too. So yes, so definitely just go there if you have anything to say. And yeah, so basically I'm going to let you guys talk. I'm going to disappear and mute myself. And yes, let's get this rolling.
Thank you, Matt. Stephen, so great to have you. Just for those just tuning in, I'm Dr. Elliot Ratzman. I'm visiting assistant professor at Grinnell College. I also teach a course on the Holocaust at Villanova. And I'm here with the director of our fine film. My name is Sarah, Steve Oritt. Could you tell us a bit, Steve, about how you got attached to this project? You have several documentaries under your belt, and we'll circle back to that. But how did you get attached to this particular project?
Sure. So, as you mentioned, my background most recently has really been in documentary features, and I started a production company a couple of years ago that we were producing those films through. And my partner in the company happens to sit on the board of the USC Shoah Foundation, and we were looking for a feature film to do, a feature project, not necessarily in the Holocaust space. We were just looking for great stories, and we continually send each other links or just little bits back and forth. And he said, my friend who sits on the board of the Shoah Foundation with me, a guy named Mickey Shapiro, his mother's survival story is really incredible. And he told me that he had recently just gotten back from Ukraine with Mickey, where he had taken Mickey over there to visit the village that his mother lived in, and the village that she ultimately hid in. And Andy is my partner, and he had a link to Sarah's testimony sent to me, the original testimony that she had given with the United States Holocaust Museum and the USC Shoah Foundation. And I watched both of the testimonies and just was really, blown away by the fact that a 12, 13, 14-year-old girl went through all of this and was able to navigate such a difficult path and ultimately survive. And I just was immediately attracted to it, and I thought that it would make for a compelling film. And Andy introduced me to Mickey. We flew to Detroit, had a lunch with Mickey, and started just getting to know one another. And then I interviewed Sarah, and slowly it kind of gestated to about a year later, we actually had a script for the film. And then about a year later, we shot it. So that's the short story.
That's great. We get a lot of films here at the Jewish Film Festival about the Holocaust, and sometimes we show them and sometimes we're exhausted by them. But your film really popped. It was really beautifully filmed, and there were some. It didn't feel like the average Holocaust film. There have been films, however, that have tracked Jews in hiding. What kind of influences did you have, and how did you imagine you were going to deviate from some of the sort of other Holocaust films that have been made in recent years?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. That was really the first kind of first thing on our mind. When I say us, myself, the producers and the screenwriter, once we were committed to doing this, we knew that there's a challenge to distinguish any new story, any new Holocaust story from all the previous films, previous content, books that have been written. And every year there seem to be a number of films that are made, some of them excellent, some of them not so excellent. But I really kind of, back to your first question, what drew me to Sarah's story so much was that it deviated from a lot of the traditional Holocaust films that I had seen, and that her story really focused on more like, I like to say, the collateral damage of the Holocaust than necessarily the Holocaust per se. And because that was, because Sarah was living in hiding on a farm for almost 2 years, and the farm, as she put it, was a bit of an island, in that the war, they were fortunate that the war very seldom visited the farm. It was just right outside of the farm, but their little sanctuary there was pretty preserved. And just, the film also really deals with a lot of the nuance and the relationships that had to be forged in order to survive. I like to say that every survival story is remarkable simply because they survive. But some certainly with a bit more fanfare or Hollywoodized than others, dramatized. And the thing that really compelled me to Sarah's story is it wasn't overly sentimental when she recounted it to me. It wasn't overly melodramatic. It really put me in the position of trying to empathize with her experience as much as possible. And I thought that hopefully, viewers would relate to that as well. As far as influences, I tried to watch everything. I mean, I was pretty well versed in most of the Holocaust content, books, films, but I tried to watch complete everything that I hadn't seen prior to that. And as I mentioned, there's some great films, and there's some not so great films, but I think each of them kind of influenced me in the direction to take Sarah's film into.
So how did the script in the end deviate, or what elements did you dramatize more from Sarah's actual testimony and her, I guess, consulting on this story? Sure.
Very few. Fortunately, we didn't have to invent much, and that I would say that the film that you all see is probably, I would say, 90% accurate to Sarah's experience. And again, that's when I was watching her testimony, my jaw was like on the floor. I just couldn't believe that all of this was true, in the way that she would kind of, every few minutes would talk about an event that happened as though, a Hollywood screenwriter was already saying, insert a plot point here, insert a plot point there. But that said, when the screenwriter David Himmelstein and I started working on the script, some of the first conversations that we had were about that this is a movie and it's not a documentary. And although I come from a documentary background, this was my first narrative film. And the challenge with Sarah's story is that she survived by really almost just blending in and being really robotic, and just going through the motions of daily farm life, and kind of trying to keep as low profile as possible. The first question I asked her when I met her was, how does a young 12, 13-year-old girl survive such a thing? And she said immediately, by listening and not talking. And that crystallized who the character was for me at that point. But As a screenwriter or a storyteller, one of the things that you learn very early on is that you want to have an active main character, and it's difficult if you have a passive main character, and if they're strictly a result of everything that's happening around them. And while that was very much the case for Sarah, because the main objective was to survive, and in order to survive, she had to to be more passive. There were a few instances where we felt as though we needed to kind of insert more of an active character that was either in the film or a scene that may not have happened to Sarah exactly, but was based upon true accounts of stories that happened at the time in the area. So, for an example for that, the execution scene in the film that happens about 2/3 of the way in the film. Not giving anything away to people that have seen it, but there's an execution scene in the film. Sarah never discussed that with me specifically. She never discussed the name of the priest, the character that we invented, Father Alexa. But we felt as though we needed someone there to establish a bond and to sort of share Sarah's secret. And we intuited that, Sarah, we knew that she went to church every week with the family. We knew that she, had to pass off as Orthodox Christian. And we knew that she had enough of an exposure and education to that through her school pre-war that she could say the prayers. She spoke, Polish, Ukrainian, Russian, or Yiddish, Hebrew, and so she vacillated through all of these. But that was an example. We invented this character of a priest, someone that she could have this connection with, and then ultimately culminates in this execution scene. While that never happened to Sarah, it's a reprisal killing that was based upon a number of events that happened in the region. This was something that the German army did often whenever there were any of their officers or attacks on any of their men. They would usually go into a nearby village, and for every one German officer that was killed, they would kill 10 civilians. So that's something that we put into the film.
Great. So all those out there, and to Stephen, I just want to say that if my internet conks out, Stephen is going to go to the Ask a Question button on the bottom of the screen and answer your questions. So I encourage you. We already have one question. We'll wait till my internet accidentally conks out to get to that. But I love the character of the priest, and I wanted to find out if that was a real character. You usually do not see portrayals of Gentiles, especially clergy, sensitive to Jews and hiding in a number of not all of them, but many of the narratives portray a homogenous anti-Semitic countryside or villages. And I thought some of the scenes showing Eastern Orthodox rituals, like the confession, were fascinating. And I cannot remember the last time I saw such interesting portrayals of Eastern Orthodoxy on screen. Now, Sarah was educated in a Catholic high school. And so was she passing as Eastern Orthodox? Was she pretending to be Ukrainian? Or was she presenting herself as a Catholic Pole who was looking for work?
So she attended a Ukrainian school. It wasn't a Catholic school. I mean, that region, which is today Ukraine, Western Ukraine, was pre-war Eastern Poland. So that region was all Poland, and she lived right on what is now the border of Poland and Ukraine. And that border shifted, and it was very complex history there between the Poles, the Ukrainians, and the Jews. So Sarah, pre-war, was going to Ukrainian school, and it wasn't a Catholic school. Her best friend was Orthodox Christian Ukrainian. And when religion class happened in the afternoon, the Jews were excused. The male Jewish students went to study the Talmud and were taking Jewish religious classes, but the young girls, the girl Jewish students didn't attend school. And so Sarah really didn't have much to do, and her at that point. And so her best friend Manya, who was Orthodox Christian, would implore her to stay sometimes during the religious class when the Orthodox priest would come in. And Sarah, she did. She never really told me much further of why she did. I don't think it was because she could have ever estimated that later in her life how valuable it would become to know these prayers and these rituals. Sarah did tell me that she remembered when it switched from Polish to Ukrainian, Ukrainian to Russian. So the language that they were learning and what they were studying there in school shifted as a result of ultimately who was controlling the territory.
Now, the other characters too, when I first started watching the film, I didn't realize it was based on a true story. I kind of like, okay, what are we looking at here? And at first, you have the characters seem to hew to a kind of story we've all heard before. You kind of have ignorant peasants. You have rapey, rude Russians. You have the sort of like suspicion. Nobody's really smiling at anyone. I don't know if that's a cultural thing or just merely a stereotypical thing. But by the end of the film, these stereotypes have become more nuanced. The characters have become more robust and have sort of burst through the kind of common snapshot many have of Gentiles in Eastern Europe. So I was glad to see that, and I was wondering, like, how did you make decisions around how you're going to represent the peasants and the Russians, and how much was based on Sarah's testimony, how much was cinematic, sort of craft?
Sure. Well, again, the thing that I was really drawn to and was excited about when we started developing the story was the gray area, the nuance. And I found, I'm not a historian. I've never really made even a historical film, but I love history. I read a lot of history. I'm drawn to historically based films and stories. But I find that, especially when it comes to war, it's so often talked about in black and white. And while, it's evident who the nefarious characters were, in World War II, it's never as easy as just sort of saying, like, oh, well, everyone was bad and these, they were all bad and these were all good. And also like the estimation of like how, if anyone can kind of, assume or pretend to kind of assume how they would have acted, decisions they would have made in those times. And the truth is, obviously, we don't know unless we're actually in their shoes at that moment. So I was immediately, that was something that I was kind of like interested in, kind of going against a lot of the tropes and a lot of the stereotypes. But I would say that, once we had a script and we started consulting with the executive director of the USC Shoah Foundation, a man named Stephen Smith, who's just an incredible mind and knows so much about the history and the region. He weighed in heavily. He had interviewed Sarah as well and knew her personally, but he weighed in on a lot of the historical accuracy, and that was something that was really important for us, for the film to maintain and preserve, a very high level of historical accuracy. And then ultimately, when we got over to Poland and started pre-production on the film, I should say the entire film was pre-produced, produced, and post-produced in Poland. We shot it in eastern Poland near Białystok. But the majority of the post-production work was done in Warsaw, and I was really very fortunate to be able to work with the top people in the Polish film industry across the board, which is really why the film is so beautiful. Everyone from the cinematographer to the production designer, the casting, the hair and makeup are just top in the industry over there. But we also relied heavily on local ethnographers, historians, Ukrainian, Polish, Russian, Gentile, Jewish, because my two partners on the film and the executive producers were both very entrenched in the Shoah Foundation and other Holocaust organizations. It was paramount for us to have a film that could stand the test of time and that could be historically accurate. But I say that, because of that, I leaned on a lot of these historians and ethnographers to kind of explore characters a bit further than just the usual superficial stereotypes that you kind of alluded to in your question. So it says here, so Elliot's waiting to reconnect. So this is where I'm supposed to stall and I'm supposed to read some of the questions. I don't have questions. I only have comments. But oh no, here's a question. Okay, how was it choosing the characters to reenact such a true story? What made you say this is who I believe? This is who? Where did that question go? Excuse me. How is it choosing the characters to reenact such a true story? What made you say this is who I believe will bring this to life? Well, the main character, Sarah, as we mentioned, was a 12, 13, 14-year-old. I was just very fascinated about making a film with a main character, the lead character being a young girl at this age. It was, again, outside of, we're all very familiar with Anne Frank and her experience, but this story is kind of like the antithesis of Anne's story. If Anne was hidden in an attic for those years, Sarah, obviously was not. She was out and had to be out. So I was immediately drawn to her as a main character. And then the two other main characters, her employers, Nadia and Pavlo, I was really drawn to as well after I learned that shortly after arriving at the farm, Sarah discovered that Pavlo had been having an affair with the previous nanny, who promptly was fired, and that's why Sarah was able to get a job, because there was job availability. So I learned, okay, so Pavlo had been cheating on his wife with the nanny, and then Sarah learned that Nadia, the mother who she's working for, was cheating on Pavlo with his younger nephew. And once I found that out, I just thought that was really an incredible foundation for a story, this, I like to refer to as this triangle with Sarah and her two employers, and that this young woman, along with having to, become an adult overnight and learn about things that, she otherwise should never have had to learn about at such a young age, also had to, learn about adult relationships, and a very complex marriage that she was thrust in the middle of. And again, in order to survive, she had to navigate some very, very complex issues between the two adults. And oftentimes I sort of envisioned her as she being the adult and them being the children. So that triangle of those three main characters were really, those were the crux of, really what I was drawn to. So the next question is, has the film been sold and will it be shown on TV and or commercially? Yes, the film was sold. We sold the film last year about this time, and the film was to be in movie theaters in North America the end of June, the last weekend of June. It was scheduled to be released theatrically, and the hope was that really by the end of the summer, by August, we would have been up to around 30, 35 cities in North America. But unfortunately, the global pandemic had different plans for us, and the film has not been released theatrically. We've been doing film festivals since that started, and our plan is to release the film in theaters, and our distributor's plan is to release the film in theaters when theaters open again, most likely no sooner than early summer. But all I can say is please check back with the website for any updates. We'll have updates on there. If we ultimately decide to not wait for theaters to open and immediately pursue a digital deal, which we'll put the film on one of the digital streaming platforms, the website will let everybody know about that. And then outside of North America, the film has also has been sold in a number of foreign territories. It was sold in and theatrically distributed in Brazil in March, and is Australia as well was theatrically distributed, and Korea, interestingly enough, and England as well. The rest of Western Europe and some other territories were kind of waiting for the North American launch to happen and kind of follow in the wake of that. And so ultimately, because that's on hold, a lot of the other territories are on hold as well. Next question. Can you talk a little bit about how the two children she worked with helped shape her time with the family, or how she navigated through their lifestyle? Yes, so Sarah was a nanny to two young boys, a 4- and 6-year-old young boys, and we talked a bit about that. Sarah was not the most forthcoming in terms of her emotional connections. By the time I met her, she was suffering from PTSD and dementia. And while she was cogent enough to have a conversation and be interviewed for a number of hours with me a few times, she wasn't comfortable talking about emotions, I think, or anything that touched her too deeply. She was much more comfortable in talking about sort of plot points, if you will, or events as they happened. So, for example, she would talk about the two boys, that they were just sort of part of her job, and that she was good at it and she took care of them, and she knew that ultimately that's what she was there to do. But I found it very ironic that Sarah had two younger brothers about the same age as these two young boys, and how difficult it must have been for her to do her job and care for these two young boys, mourning the loss and the death of her two younger brothers, not to mention her own parents. And I found that to be haunting. Must have been haunting for her, because clearly she had to perform well, she had to do her job, and she couldn't have given any indication that she was sad about anything else in her past, because she basically started a new life and was purporting to be a different person than she really was. So next question is, did Sarah ever mention seeing any parts of herself in her bosses, or even discovered about herself? No, she did not. Again, Sarah was not that introspective. The two testimonies that I mentioned, the first with the United States Holocaust Museum and the second with the USC Shoah Foundation, that she had given, and that were the foundation for a lot of our research and material. Those are all both available on YouTube or on the United States Holocaust Museum's website. You can find theirs, and the Shoah Foundation's testimony archive. You can find Sarah's there, and you can go through and watch them, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. That she was very matter of fact, and there really wasn't much space in her mind or her heart for reminiscing or any kind of sentimentality. I think she was suffering greatly from PTSD. I don't know if she knew that, or if it was actually diagnosed, but I'm not a professional, but I could just I could just see, just in talking to her, how closed down she was, and I could only imagine that's how she dealt with what she dealt with, because it's inconceivable what she was able to pull off. So she didn't really talk about her bosses in terms of whether, if she saw much inside of them, of herself in them. But again, back to one of the earlier questions, this main triangle of main characters of Sarah and her two employers, it left us a lot of space to intuit what was happening and what was going on there. But Sarah did not shed much specific light on those relationships beyond things like, they were mean, or he was mean to me, or she didn't like me, or she was mean to me. But she lived with them for almost 2 years, and in very close quarters. And I can only imagine that to some degree, she became a part of their family. But she also she never answered the question for me of, I asked her if she thought they knew her true identity, and she didn't give me much information there. She would just sort of say something kind of callous, like, of course they didn't know I was a Jew. They would have killed me. And I would say, okay, yeah, of course, that's a dumb question. I'm sorry, but I just I did a lot of kind of imaginative exploration there of what I thought these characters, kind of the relationship that they built and the conversations that they may have had, and as did David Himmelstein, our screenwriter, and that was something that he and I were very attracted to. Again, that it wasn't so that Sarah didn't delineate everything, and that she left so much room for interpretation. So the next question is, how did Sarah feel watching the film and seeing how we chose to creatively string things together? So Sarah, I should mention, passed away 2 years ago almost. And Sarah passed away prior to final completion of the film. But Sarah was not aware even that a film was being made about her life story. And that wasn't my decision, but that was her son's, Mickey Shapiro's decision, and my partner making the film, because of Sarah's reluctance to talk about it much of her life, because of her reluctance to talk about it in an emotional depth, even late when I interviewed her, or a number of other people did. I guess Mickey felt as though it would have been too painful for her to relive this through a film. And so when I met her, she didn't know that I was interviewing her under the auspices of making a film. She thought that I was a lawyer and was interviewing her for some reason, and Mickey didn't want to clarify that, and then that's his decision. So she never saw the film, and again, she wasn't aware that the film was being made. But she has an extended family in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan, outside of Detroit. That's where she and Asa, her husband, immigrated to, started a family there. They had 3 sons, and their sons. There's some grandchildren, and Sarah was very close with her grandchildren. And when I first screened the film for the extended family, there were a number of things about Sarah's story and her experience that members of her family weren't aware of, previously weren't aware of, and only learned about in watching of the film. And some of these were very very difficult, painful memories that or events that they ultimately learned about by watching the film. And I could only imagine how that must have been for them. But I should say that Mickey and his entire family were just so gracious with first of all, bestowing the honor on me to be able to tell Sarah's story and share it with the world, and the responsibility, of doing so. And I felt an enormous responsibility to tell Sarah's story accurately and emotionally and successfully, whatever that means. And I feel as though we did that. We all honored her legacy by sharing her story. And for those of you who have seen the film, there's a scene in the film that Sarah shared with me, a true story of the night that she said goodbye to her parents. At the time, they were living in the ghetto in Oritt. They had been living there for about a year. And they learned that the ghetto was going to be liquidated the following morning. And so her parents demanded that she and her older brother escape the ghetto, and that they had prearranged with a Ukrainian farmer woman outside of town to hide Sarah and her older brother for some gold that Sarah's father had paid her in advance. And her mother tells her this, instructs her this, and says, you need to leave now. That's it. You need to, don't come back. That's it. And Sarah refused to go. She said, no, I won't, I can't leave you all. And then her father stepped in and said, no, Sarah, this is, you and your brother are leaving. And her mother just said to her that, you need to leave because you need to survive, and your survival is going to be our revenge. And I say that because on the night before our first day of filming in Białystok in eastern Poland, we had a meeting with all of the cast and crew, and we were all together in a room. And these were people that I did not know that well at that point. And I spoke in English because I don't speak Polish. And I spoke in English, and my translator translated what I was saying, but I basically shared that story with them. And I said that, Sarah, she did survive, obviously, and she did immigrate to the United States and carry on her family's legacy that is still going. And that's the revenge that her mother instructed her to pursue. And by making the film, and all of us participating in making the film and starting a very difficult process of about a year we were about to embark on, I said it's a way for all of us to participate in Sarah's legacy and her mother's instructions, that carrying on the family's legacy and Sarah's legacy is the revenge. And that's a way for all of us as filmmakers and craftsmen to participate in that. But moreover, it's a way for all of you all, as viewers and fans of the film, to participate in that as well. And that's the sentiment that I really tried to hone in on and preserve, and it was ever present, on the set. And it really, I think it led us to the result of, the resulting film that you guys hopefully just watched.
Oh, hi, Steve.
Hey, how you doing?
Hi, it's me. Yeah, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. These questions are amazing. So just a little update. Elliot is having some technical difficulties, so he's trying to get back on right now.
No problem.
In the meantime, though, yeah, we do have a few more minutes left. So anybody who's on, please ask your questions if you have any in the Ask a Question button on the left side. And I just wanted to say something about the film, too. I mean, I'm the festival manager, but I also help, head the screening committee. So, we review all these movies. And, we got this film a while back, I think. And I think, before COVID, we heard it was going to come out commercially. So we kind of were like, oh, I don't think we're going to get it in time. But, we did. One thing about this movie that really stuck out for us is that, it really shows you the status quo of what it was like back then, because you see a lot of Holocaust movies and that's kind of just from one point of view, or it's usually set in a camp or something. But this really is a film that shows you just the growing anti-Semitic, sentiment in town. And, there's just the scene that like is just so haunting to me is that scene when, Sarah goes to that party and they're just dressed up as, in like anti-Semitic clothing with like the big nose and everything like that. And it's frightening. I think that the movie really is just a frightening reminder of just how socially acceptable, anti-Semitism was back then, and these primarily, Christian villages, which is one thing that we just really why we wanted to show it. Definitely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I know that because of our where things fell on the calendar, and that we were supposed to have our theatrical release this summer. I knew that there were a number of very important, quite frankly, Jewish film festivals that we're going to miss. Yours being one of them, and just by nature of the fact this is your 40th year. I mean, that's incredible. So the fact that we can participate in it in this forum, and that it gives people an opportunity to watch it, because right now there's very little to watch it on film, online, and people are really clamoring to do so. I understand.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, thank you. Appreciate all of those words, and like everybody always says this about filmmaking, and whenever I've seen interviews with filmmakers, it's so collaborative, and it requires such an army of people. But it's so true, especially when it comes to something like this with so many moving parts. And again, we were just so conscious about preserving historical accuracy, and so making sure that like everything down from like the armbands are placed in the right place, the uniforms are the right ones, the hats are everything is it was exhausting. But I guess that kind of rolls into the last question that I have here. Fits nicely. It asks, now that everything is complete with the storytelling process, how do I and the team feel overall with the outcome of everyone's hard work? I'm immensely proud of what we were able to achieve. I haven't even mentioned it, but our lead actress, Zuzanna Surowy, was just an incredible gift to be able to find her. She had never acted before. We did an open casting call in Poland and saw about 650 young women.
Wow.
And discovered her out of this group. And she is to me, the fulcrum to the film. And the story that I told about when I first interviewed Sarah, where the response she gave, how she survived by listening and not talking, Zuzanna really personifies that, because she has such power. Her performance is so powerful through her eyes and her face, really without saying many words. And so I'm so proud that we were able to achieve what we did with a first-time actress who didn't speak English, who had never acted before. This was my first narrative film. We shot the entire thing over in Poland. I did 30 trips there in 4 years. And so all of those difficulties stacked up together could have made for a really difficult experience. But it ended up not so, and that we made the film that we did. As I alluded to earlier, I think of most importance to me that Mickey and the family be proud of the film and supportive of the film. So I know that they are, and they were when they first saw it. That's more than anything. If they weren't proud of it, or if they didn't want to support it, that to me, that would have made things, would have stopped things dead in their tracks. I think so. They're just really an integral part to that kind of like success. But in terms of I think a traditional definition of success, the film hasn't been released yet, so we don't know how audiences beyond the festivals, how it's done. But we've won a number of awards at festivals, and the reaction I'm getting from audience members, and seeing how it lands with people and resonates with people, makes me extremely proud. and you know, I'll close by saying, you know, I think myself and Mickey and Andy, my two partners on the film, define success by the film by, you know, as many people out there in the world that can see this film. You know, that's what our objective is really to share the story, hopefully make it, you know, ubiquitous with as many people as possible. And the fact that the film, you know, didn't come out in June of 2020, but may come out in theaters of June of 21. I don't think it'll be any less relevant then, or even in 22. You know, it's a film that can stand the test of time, and the story is universal. And for that, you know, for all of that, I guess I'm most proud.
Yes, and you should be proud. You know, this is such a tremendous movie. It's so, the detail in it is just so meticulously crafted too, because you know why? We get a lot of movies in, you know, especially Holocaust films, and you can just tell that they just don't feel like you're there exactly. You know, it has to do with the setting, it has to do with the costumes and just the mood and the atmosphere of it all. And this film, you know, from beginning to end, it takes you right there to that time period. And it's really tremendous. And I really absolutely agree. You know, whenever this does come out commercially in theaters, it's not going to be any less timeless than it is right now. I think obviously Sarah's story is just one that will just forever be, you know, extraordinary. And we wish the best of luck for this actress who, what's her name again?
Zuzanna, like,
yeah,
Suzanne.
Suzanne, unbelievable performance. I mean, truly, like you said, it's a performance that's all about, you know, expression, and you just can see so much of the pain and the fear, but she always just keeps it together in so many scenes. And it's truly, yeah, it's an amazing film. Well, I guess where, Stephen, can we learn? Does the film have a website that we can get?
MyNameIsSarah.com. You can sign up there for any of, like, you know, the updates that we'll send out in terms of release, other festivals that it's appearing at. There's also a Facebook page, Instagram page. You can access both of those through the website, MyNameIsSarah.com. But you know, we'll have updates on all of those platforms, and then there are, you know, a number of regional festivals that the film is appearing at between now and the end of the year. So you know, I urge people, if you haven't seen it and you're interested, to go onto the website and see if any of those festivals are in your region, because you know, for example, if you live in Barbados and you can't log on and watch the you know, film festival in Philadelphia or California, but there are a number of different regional festivals all over the country right now. And I just, you know, I think it's awesome what you guys and other festivals are doing, you know, pivoting to like this model in this time. And what's really awesome is that, you know, people are becoming more comfortable with you know, engaging with film and filmmakers this way. And it's, you know, it's a great way to be able to have an intimate conversation. Granted, I would much prefer to be in person and feed off of live energy, but you know, until we're able to figure out what's going on with the theatrical industry and when the film is going to be out there, you know, for now, this is the best way that we can go about doing that. So we're doing a number of festivals, and then we're also going to be doing a number of just specific specials with different organizations like the United States Holocaust Museum,
Perfect. Wow.
Memorial Museum. We already did one with the USC Shoah Foundation. So all that stuff you can find out about on the website, MyNameIsSarah.com.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Well, thank you so much, Stephen, for joining us virtually. You know, it's a cliche. I've been saying this a lot, but COVID won't take us down. COVID is never going to take film festivals down. You know, even though we can't go physically to these theaters, we're still going to be showing amazing films like My Name is Sarah and so many others. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for making this powerful, powerful film. To everybody here who is watching, The movie is still available to stream. It's going to be available until tomorrow, Wednesday, November 11th at 8 p.m. So you still have time to watch it. Definitely, please do. Tell your friends about it. I posted the link to the film, or not the link to the film, I'm sorry, the link to the film's website. No, not that. The link to the film's website I posted right here on the right in the chat room. And yes, thank you, everybody. Please enjoy the rest of this festival. And thank you, Stephen, so much. Best of luck with everything. I'm going to go check on Elliot and make sure he's okay.
All right, cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much, though. Thank you.
No, appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.